So we end this concert of the New Haven Symphony with probably the most iconic symphony of all time, Beethoven's Symphony No. 5 in C minor. I purposefully wanted to include it on this program because it has real symbolic meaning. It's long been held up as the idea of humankind conquering fate. The first movement, of course, perhaps the first four notes are the most instantly recognizable da-da-da-da in all of classical music. But it's worth noting that Beethoven makes an incredible concentrated movement out of basically these four notes in all sorts of different permutations. And while it ends in the minor as it began, there's a point about 3/4 of the way through that Beethoven leads us into believing that in fact things are going to work out well. The trumpets and drums join the texture in a way, and we turn into the major key, and we think that these four notes are going to bring us into a triumphant ending. But in a move that is so Beethoven, he turns things around and defies our expectations and brings us back to the kind of fist-shaking, conspiring against fate motif that the symphony opened with. The journey through the rest of the symphony is equally unpredictable. Following this dramatic and terse first movement, Beethoven brings us a much more calm and reflective, slow movement. But I think the real revolutionary aspect of the symphony unfolds in the third and fourth movements. In many ways, this piece, along with his earlier Eroica symphony, mark a transition of aesthetic from the classical world of Haydn and Mozart into the full-on romantic movement that was to succeed Beethoven. The third movement, for me, is all about ghosts. The opening in the cellos and basses, which is barely audible, feels like there's some sort of evil spirit in the room. And it's answered by a variation of that da-da-da-da motif for the horns, who now transform it into three beats in a bar. Ba-ba-ba-bam, 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 ba-da-ba-bam. But for me, the most magical part of the entire symphony comes at the end of this third movement and the transition into the fourth movement, which follows without a break. And it's a point where the ghosts are back again, and it's very spectral in nature. And then suddenly the timpani comes in, playing that fate motif, ba-ba-ba-bam, ba-ba-ba-ba, stuck on one note. And it's like a pulse or a heartbeat that we hear very faintly. And the violins, who have sat on this single note for a long time, detach themselves and gradually twist higher and higher, still incredibly soft. And then one by one, all of the other instruments quickly come in, and we have this amazing tsunami of sound that erupts into the joy and brilliance of the martial-like last movement. It's one of the great moments, I think, in all of symphonic literature that never fails to send a tingle up your spine. But here's the thing about this last movement that I think, in a way in which I hadn't even expected when I programmed it, has even greater contemporary significance. We feel that when the movement starts and is well underway, that we're home free. That this moment of unadulterated joy and happiness is going to continue all the way through to the end of the movement. But Beethoven has other plans for us, because about 3/4 of the way through, those ghosts of the third movement suddenly come back, and we are momentarily dragged back into that tense and uncertain atmosphere before finally the triumphant music is brought back. And I think that that's Beethoven saying to us, be careful. Life is complicated. It doesn't always go the way you'd expect to, and that triumph, no matter how much you think about it, is always going to come at a cost and a price. And as I suppose we're all thinking of where we are going now in the middle of this, well, maybe in the middle, but we certainly hope towards the end of the pandemic, it is a timely reminder that in the midst of life there is also suffering, and it gives us all a greater meaning, a greater purpose. And for that, I think we have to thank Beethoven for showing us the full range of the human condition in the space of a 35-minute symphony. And I think it's for those reasons that this symphony has persisted now for over 200 years as part of the central repertoire. And it's one of the reasons that I'm absolutely delighted and thrilled to bring it back with my friends and colleagues of the New Haven Symphony. I hope you enjoy it as well as the rest of the evening's performance. Thank you.